thank you, Ismail. Welcome everybody. It's so nice to see some of the old friends and to make some new friends. So here we have been working together on Bangladesh for several years, and well, Rachel, we just saw you last week, right? And in the meantime, Dr. Ismail gave us a wonderful tour. So I'm very impressed about your facility here. Just for your information, I grew up in a region in China where we struggled with salinity problem. We produce rice, wheat, and maize. So how to control the salinity was a big issue for us when I was a child, 40 or 50 years. Now, so here you will see my presentation has several keywords. One is intensification. The other one is nutrition. The third is drylands. So 3 keywords. Others probably are not new to you. The combination of intensification, nutrition, and drylands are key sort of essence of my presentation. So we know that hunger and undernutrition persist in drylands. Very much focus on my presentation today. And the resource scarcity amidst climate change threatens food security and nutrition, and particularly in drylands area. Sustainable intensification with nexus approach is crucial. Nexus approach, the integration of water, land, food, nutrition, energy is a new way of doing business. Finally, policies, technologies, and institutions are needed to advance sustainable intensification. I know you have very much worked on many issues, particularly on technologies. Here I wanted to emphasize institutions and policy are equally important. So here's a map to show you poor and hungry people actually are very much concentrated in drylands or in drylands countries. So if you look at the correlation between poverty, hunger, and drylands, you see it's very high. In fact, 40% of the world poor and hungry people in dryland areas. And I don't have a figure, but the depth of poverty, depth of hunger, poverty are even more serious in drylands. They are very vulnerable. Volatility, vulnerability are even higher. So right now we're talking about 805 million people suffering from hunger and malnutrition. They're not fixed. This year maybe there's another 200 million who falls into poverty, hunger. Another 300 million moves out. But it is in dry area, the depth of hunger and malnutrition is probably the highest. And you look at some of the dry countries, Yemen, Pakistan, Ethiopia, Mali, Tajikistan, Chad, and Burkina Faso. So their hunger level, undernourishment level is still very high. So very often more than 20%. In some countries, 30%, 40%. And in many of these countries, the progress has been slower than the global average. The global average undernourishment rate has come down from about 18% in 1990 to about 12, 13% today. But for dryland countries, the progress has been much slower. You can look at the progress in Yemen, Pakistan, Mali, Tajikistan, Burkina Faso. It is all these countries where the conflicts are most frequent and intense. So my colleague Clemens is here. So he has worked on conflict issues, particularly in this part of the region. I will ask him to say a couple of words about his work in the region later.
And it's worrying, Shengeen, that in Tajikistan it went up as much.
Yeah, that's right. Well, partly because of the transition, partly because of the deterioration of the institution policies. Anyway, blame FAO for introducing this data. So we use the FAO data.
The SOFI.
Right. So natural resource scarcity threatens food security and nutrition in drylands. So water and land scarcity. So this is very much the areas you have been working on. So agriculture is both vulnerable and also contributed to resource scarcity. So we do not want to make agriculture rosy. Agriculture is part of the problem as well, in addition to be part of the solution. The climate change, droughts, and high frequency and intensity of extreme weather events lead to increased resource scarcity, greater food price volatility. So I will show you, in fact, in some of the dryland areas, price volatility is much greater than non-dryland areas. So drylands suffer from water scarcity. On average, agriculture consumes 70% of freshwater resources. And drylands contain only 8% of the world's renewable water supply, despite housing 1/3 of global population. So you can see much less water per capita in dryland area. So up to 35% of global irrigation withdrawals are unsustainable, 35%. And when irrigation is available, farmers in dry areas overuse water by 20 to 60%. Again, part of the problem, part of the challenges, but also part of the solution. Water stress is rising in drylands. Look at this map. It is in some of the dry areas, dryland countries, where the water stress is the most severe, and it will become even more severe in the future. So right now, 36% of the global population is in water-scarce regions, 22% of global GDP. But by 2050, 52% of the global population will be in water-scarce region. And 45% of global GDP will come from water-scarce region. And 49% of the global grain production, almost half of the grain production, will come from water-scarce region. And this is a simulation from an IFPRI model called impact model, international global trade model, to link supply and demand, technologies, trade, policies together. So land degradation is high in drylands. So 24% of global land area affected by degradation, so 24%. And annual forest net loss is about 5.2 million hectares per year from 2000 to 2010, so it lasted 10 years. And we have seen the rapid decline of arable land available on a per person basis. In fact, from 1997 to 2000, 65% per capita land has been lost. This is a period of the Green Revolution, particularly in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And we will expect the land area will decline further, probably by more than 50% from now to 2050. And the land degradation in dryland area is even more severe. Look at the chart in Senegal. And up to 20% of global drylands are degraded. And the dryland degradation costs 4 to 8% of GDP annually in developed country. 4 to 8% of annual GDP. Could you imagine? We're struggling with growth, inclusive growth. But every year we lose 4 to 8% of GDP. And it is in dryland areas where the loss will be the most. So this is against the so-called inclusive growth. So Ismahan mentioned about my involvement in the World Economic Forum. This year the hot topic is inclusive growth. How can we promote growth that benefit poor people, poor region, poor areas? And dryland has a big role to play there. We know the climate change is coming. We know the climate change will hit us very hard. Will hit agricultural or food system very hard. Everybody is talking about maintaining temperature rise below 2 degrees. However, I'm afraid business as usual will increase temperature by 4 degrees. It's by the end of this century. I just cannot imagine a 4-degree warmer planet will look like, particularly the impact on our food system. So we are planning to do some modeling work. So how 4-degree world would affect our global food supply, food demand, and more important, the regional mitigation. So we know that the large negative impact on agriculture and nutrition, water constraints. A 4-degree world definitely will affect water by a very big margin. And human and animal health, direct and indirect. Indirect through food, through water, but there is also direct impact. 4-degree warmer will introduce another diseases, another health hazard. And we project that food prices will rise by more than 100% for wheat, and definitely by more than 50% for maize by 2050, not even by the end of the century. And as I said, the climate change will affect the dryland areas much bigger than any other regions. Look at the red color. The food price spikes and the volatility are increasing. We know that since 2007, 2008, food prices have become very volatile. Today goes up, tomorrow comes down. It's like a roller coaster. And for the last 4 or 5 years, we have seen the lowest food prices. But the fundamental factors behind the 2007, 2008 food crisis are still here. So they are like the ghosts in our closet. They can come out anytime, hit us. Extreme weather events, the climate change will make that even worse. The strong link between food prices and oil prices. Oil prices now are suspiciously very low. We don't know the fundamental reason behind that. There are lots of theory behind that. The reason why we should be worried, because anytime they could shoot up again. So that's strong link between oil prices and food prices. That makes food prices very volatile. And the situation in dryland areas is even worse. Price volatility in dry countries, dry areas, are even higher than global average. I only have the number for several countries here: Ethiopia, Sudan, and Greece. In many, many dry areas, the food prices are very volatile because it depends on weather, depends on rainfall. And they have very poor infrastructure. Access to roads, access to markets are very much limited. People's livelihoods is not diversified. So they are very vulnerable to any price shocks. And we project that in the next 40 years, from 2010 to 2050, the food prices levels will continue to rise and the volatility will remain very high. So sustainable intensification with a nexus approach. So what do I mean by intensification? Actually very simple. That is to produce more with less. Here, produce more, it's not just more grains, maximized grains. No? We did that during the Green Revolution. In the 70s, 80s, Vietnam, China, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh. Our objective was to maximize the grain yield because we needed to feed more mouths. Without that, millions, even billions of people would have died, would have suffered from hunger. So great achievement during the Green Revolution period. But today, it's not good enough. More nutrition. More means more nutrition. Less means less inputs. Water, land, fertilizers, pesticides, and less carbon emission. So that's intensification. Intensification with more, let's say, more with less. And a nexus approach. Water, land, food, and energy actually should be part of that too. So I just wanted to emphasize the three, but energy, climate change will be part of that story. So a nexus approach is try to minimize the trade-offs and promote sector synergies. For the last several decades, we have been working in silence. Even at IFPRI, we have a water team truly just to work on water issues. We have a technology team to promote technology high yield, more food production. Even within the same division, with production technology environment are the same division, but they are working in silos, 3 different teams. But today, the silos approach is not acceptable. They have to work together. So we force them to work together to use a nexus approach. How can we really minimize the trade-offs and maximize the synergies? So when you talk about water, you have to look at the food production. When you talk about the yield, you have to look at the water. So instead of production per hectare, we also have to look at the production output per unit of water, per cubic of water. And it requires great levels of collaboration among actors from each sector to work together, promote connective policies, design, implementation, and monitor. So we can talk about it, we can force them to work together, but we needed to have indicators to measure cross-sector impact. Just to give you some examples of so-called triple wins. So some sort of pilot study in Kenya. Kenya is part of Kenya is a very dry area. This is from dry area, triple win. Triple win, this is more on the climate change. So how we can force different sectors to work together under the climate change scenario. One win is productivity impact. We needed to produce more, particularly more nutritious food. The population is increasing, the demand is increasing, we need to produce more. But meantime, we have to adapt to climate change. Climate is changing. How can we change our practices to make sure that the yield will not be affected? And the third win is equally important. How can agriculture help to mitigate the climate change, reduce the carbon emission? Agriculture accounts for 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emission. So it's a part of the problem, part of the challenge. Can we convert that to part of the solution? So triple win, the third win is critical. So there are many, many practices can lead to triple win. For example, improved crop varieties or types. I mean, you're doing great work. I just went through your experimental fields. Triple win. So how can you introduce newer varieties that can help to improve productivity when you are doing that under all kinds of stresses, water, salinity. But I think adaptive climate change, well, obviously is part of your work there, and to help to mitigate the climate change. I'm so happy to see different sensors in your field to monitor the temperature, right, to moisture, all this. I really hope you could also look at the nutrition status of the soil, so you can optimize the use of fertilizer. Because fertilizer uses enough energy. Part of the equation there is energy. And also carbon emission. Can you also monitor the carbon emission? So go beyond what you're doing. Yeah. So you have great room to move, to innovate. Then improved crop rotation. So particularly with some of the soil sort of conservation crops, pulses, or any crop that can help to improve the soil fertility, the nitrogen fixing plants, crops. Use of cover crops. I have also seen some of your trees and grass together, right? So this is a good example, but in food production, there are many, many cases. Rotation, intercropping, the appropriate use of fertilizer and manure. Again, the technology will be so important. The sensor. In Canada, in fact, the University of Guelph introduced some sort of new sensor to monitor the soil fertility in the soil. So the farmers can optimize the use of fertilizers. I hope countries like China and India can adopt that technology very quickly. So I asked Ismail, what will be the cost? So if Indians and Chinese farmers can optimize the use of fertilizer, they can reduce the fertilizer use by 40%, and the contribution to carbon the reduction of carbon emission, contribution to reducing soil and water pollution. Benefits is huge, huge. So innovation is so critical. So all these technologies can help farmers to improve its productivity, therefore its income, and help them to adapt to climate change and to help to mitigate the climate change. Now the question is incentives. Yeah, farmers know all this. What will be the incentives for them to do the second and third columns? So incentivization is critical. So policy, institution must be part of the story. So not just the technologies. So policy innovation in dry area are needed to improve our livelihoods of people. We have mentioned about increasing investment in agriculture, R&D that supports sustainable intensification, water soil conservation, biodiversity. I think we mentioned about it, biodiversity. So biodiversity is not only going to be good for your soil, for your environment, but very critical for nutrition. In the last 30, 40 years, we have promoted monoculture, rice, wheat, maize, in many parts of the world, at the cost of nutrition, at the cost of soil fertility. We must change that practice. Promote risk management for dry areas. As I said, dry areas are particularly vulnerable. Policy innovations, institutional innovations are needed, particularly insurance, weather-based index insurance, migration non-farm jobs. We don't need to force the poor people, hungry people, to stay in their poor, degraded land. Like my household, my family, my village. Yeah, although our soil actually is very fertile, however, the salinity was a problem. So we were under the pressure of increased population. What we do? We moved enough people out. So I have 3 brothers. 2 of them have moved out. One is there. So now he can have the land left from the 2 brothers. So he can increase his operation size. He can also rent some of the land from his neighbors. Many of them moved out. So the soil quality can be further improved. The farmer's income can be increased. The size of operation can be increased. And they are able to use modern technology, greenhouses, to produce vegetables, fruits, to sell to the urban markets. So do not force smallholders to stay in their land, particularly dry and poor areas. It's not fair to them. So migration is an option. Then ensure food prices reflect full costs and the benefits of natural resources use. Subsidies of water, subsidies in electricity. So all this actually distorted the full cost of the food production. By doing that, the natural resources have also been degraded. And on the benefit side, the nutrition benefits of certain crops, of certain food items, like quinoa, we discussed so much today. So the market has not delivered the nutrition value of these crops, partly because the knowledge of consumers, partly because of the market failure, partly because of our policy failure. So I have a proposal. How can we convert some of the water, electricity, fertilizer subsidies to direct income support to farmers? Let the farmers optimize the use of these inputs. Now on the nutrition side, because market will not be able to fix the nutrition problem, or will not deliver the nutrition value. Can we tax unhealthy food, fat, sugar, salt, and then use that revenue to support more nutritious food production through R&D investment, through improved farming practices? So as economists, we can always try to fix the market problem, market failures. And scale up a productive social safety net. Many poor, many hungry people, particularly in dryland areas, they needed to access nutritious food in short run. They're very vulnerable. So how can we set up social protection system to protect the poor, particularly women and children, during crisis? So when there's a system and a crisis comes, you will be able to help them. And make sure that that protection links to nutrition, health. So not just grains, not just rice, wheat. So India is introducing one of the largest social protection programs in the world, food security bill. The coverage is about 60%. So 60% of Indian citizens will be able to benefit from that. However, there are a couple of issues. One is it's not targeted, 60%. Hunger level in India is about 20-something%. So lots of non-poor will benefit from that. They don't care. You know, they probably spend 20%, 30% of their income on food. You give them some subsidized rice, wheat, they don't care. But for government, it's a very huge, huge fiscal cost, financial cost. That's one problem. Another problem is that program has to link to nutrition. Right now, it's more subsidized rice or cheap rice, 2 rupees per kg, rice or wheat. I had some experience in Egypt 30 years ago. When I was there, the wheat was heavily subsidized from imported American wheat. American aid. You know what is the result? Egyptians use wheat to feed chicken, particularly for urban consumers. So huge, huge wastage there, and a huge problem in linking that to nutrition. We're seeing lots of obese, overweight people because wheat, rice are so cheap. And investing in sustainable intensification technologies. So you are doing great here. And CGI is also doing lots of work in introducing new technologies. IFPRI, again using the impact model, we simulated how 11 different technologies would affect future food supply by using less inputs. 11 technologies, from no-till, water harvesting, heat and drought tolerance. Sometimes it's not single technology. It's a combination of different technologies that can make much bigger impact. So the synergy impact. So 1 + 1 is equal to 3, not 2. The synergy of different technologies. Biofortification improves yields and nutrition. IFPRI leads a very large research program called biofortification. So by breeding, we add micronutrients, vitamin A, zinc, iron, to rice, wheat, maize, sorghum, millet, sweet potatoes, and beyond. We know that for many people in South Asia, particularly Bangladesh and India, when the income increased, they actually consume more rice. That was a surprise to us. Now, we thought, rice is an inferior good. So when the income increases, the rice consumption will go down. Well, that's what we observed in China. But in Bangladesh, in India, the rice consumption still goes up. And at the cost of their nutrition. So many girls are anemic, particularly in South India. 80% of the girls are anemic. So if they're anemic, as a mother, their children will be affected. Their children's health, their children's brain, their intelligence will be affected. So 1,000 days, 1,000 days is a campaign for the global community to push for the nutrition for the babies from the conception to the 2 years birthday. And it's very critical. And going beyond this 1,000, even before the 1,000 days, for girls, rural girls, even before their pregnancy, solving anemic issues will help to improve their own health and their children's health and probably future economic growth. So IFPRI did a study to look at the cost and the benefit. So $1 invested in addressing this undernutrition problem, the returns will be $30. So 1 to 30. You're not going to find this type of returns in many other sectors. So precision agriculture has great potential, like what you're doing here. It's a part of precision agriculture. In addition, what the land leveling, putting the sensors, tractors that can monitor soil fertility, water, moisture content, temperature, to optimize the use of water, fertilizer, will be critical. I just give you one example of technology CGI is introducing right now called C4 rice. C4 rice. Typical rice has 3 seeds. But this newer variety has 4 seeds. So the advantage of this rice is drought and heat resistant. So this is very useful for dryland area, right? Supports sustainable intensification through increased water use efficiency. So that variety can improve water use efficiency by 30%. That's what I heard from IWI's Director General Bob Ziegler. Nitrogen use efficiency by 30% and increase yield by 50%. And this variety thrives in hot, arid environments with scarce resources. So I really hope you can reach out to work with IFPRI to look at the potential of these new technologies. I think right now some scientists are working on other crops. Wheat. Maize is, I think, has 4C already.
Yes.
So maybe some other crops, particularly dryland crops. The dryland crops, water is scarce, it's becoming hotter. And policy should be context specific. One size fits all does not work. As for East African highlands, about 10 or 15 years ago, IFPRI did some study together with some other CGI research centers, ICBA, CIMIT, to look at the different types of dryland areas. So high potential, it's a high agriculture potential and a favorable market access. So it's a combination of biophysical potential with social economic environment. So high agriculture potential, but less favorable market access. Low agriculture potential, these three types, and they need different strategies. So for example, in a high agriculture potential with favorable market access, we need to promote high-value commodities and non-farm activities to facilitate and improve land management, access pest and disease problems. For high agriculture potential, but less favorable market access, this is true in many parts of the world, in parts of Eastern India. So promote less perishable agricultural commodities, such as coffee, cereals, and part of Ethiopian highlands also belong to that area. Increase access to inorganic fertilizers and improved seeds. And then you have some sort of experiment to look at how tree can help to increase the soil fertility, provide organic fertilizers. And low agriculture potential, here, migration is one of the strategies. Invest in livestock, tree planting, and other livelihoods where irrigation is not available. Other livelihoods, irrigation, migration, non-farm activities. So strengthen capacity for sustainable intensification. So the capacity of institutions is so critical. Many of you attended the Addis Ababa conference for building resilience for food and nutrition security. So the capacity is so critical. Whose capacity? Capacity of institutions, capacity of people. So this is the final slide. I know you have been very active in Ethiopia, in parts of Eastern Africa, highlands. So policy, technologies, and institutions for sustainable intensification will be crucial for building resilience in drylands. So for that, IFPRI, ICBA have a great opportunity to work together. Thank you very much. And I want to